Okay, so we're going to begin, and I want to welcome everyone to the second Truth in 10 webinar in South Asia. This is part of a global collaboration between the Climate Reality Project and the Global Shaper community. The Global Shaper community is, of course, as many of you know, a community of young change makers that are driving dialogue, action, and change nested within the World Economic Forum. This event is currently hosted by the Global Shapers Mumbai Hub, and we have facilitators who are joining us from Chennai, from Kandy in Sri Lanka, Nagpur, Jaipur, Guwahati, and did I miss any hub? Thana, sorry, yes, we did. And Thana. And we're very, very excited for all of them to join us for this and help through this whole event. And we're also very excited for all of you to join. I want to hand it over to Mithika, who is our amazing curator, or just outgoing curator, and is just a wonderful, amazing sustainability champion who does amazing work. And I'll let her take us through this whole event today.
One thing you guys need to know about the Global Shaper community is there's a lot of mutual respect and love going around. So I'll have the exact same things to say about Rishwa. Rishwa is also one of our sustainability champions, which is why all of us have decided to host this wonderful evening for you today. Thank you for spending your Saturday evening with us amidst all this festivity and amidst all this lockdown excitement, if I can call it that. But yes, the best thing about a Saturday is you can wake up late on a Sunday. So I'm glad you all here, and we'll have something to think about this weekend after our session. On that note, welcome to the Truth in 10 webinar, hosted as Rishwa has already pointed out by the Global Shaper community. Today, we are hoping to talk to you about climate change. But before we get to that, we're going to play a little quick icebreaker. I want to see who all are present here. And for that, if you guys have logged into Zoom on your laptop, please switch to the grid view. If you've not, make sure you're going to the participant section of Zoom so that you get to see each other as well and start looking presentable. I have a few questions for all of you, and I'm dying to see your faces. So make sure you have your video screens on. So in a minute, I see a lot of screens coming on. That's awesome. Okay, so if any of you are students right now, turn your video on. Everyone else, please turn your videos off. We have two students with us. 3. Oh, lovely. And a few more joining in. How exciting. Okay. How many of us know a little bit about climate change or something about climate change? If you know about it, turn your video on. That's a lot of people. Okay, this is awesome. Who would have thought there's so many climate activists out there? This is awesome. See each other's faces. You'd be talking to each other very soon. Okay, the next question, keep your video on or have your video on if you're working in the climate space or have done some work in the climate space. That's a lot of people. That's 4 rows right here. That's awesome. Okay, and turn your video on if you're tired of virtual meetings and Zoom calls and are back to wanting to meet people in person. Okay, wonderful. That's pretty much everyone. I see a few people who don't have their videos on. I'm going to call out some of them. Muskan Bali. Why don't I see your video on? Do you really want to have... Do you not want to meet people in person?
No, I'm so shy. That's why.
Okay. Okay, but you want to meet people in person. That's important. I also see Siddhartha or Rohini. Any of you want to shout out and tell us why you don't want to meet people in person? That I would want to learn that, which is why I'm asking. No? No volunteers? Okay. I think people are just turning the video on because I'm going to start calling out names because if they don't. Uh, okay, cool. So let's do this. Last question, okay? So that we get a sense of what nationalities are in here. How many people from here are not from India? Turn your video on. We have a few internationals right here. Ritika, welcome on board. Ritika, did you have your video on? No, I think it's off again. Shaggy, I don't see your video on. Oh, there we are. Wonderful. Okay, great. On that note, just laying a few ground rules out here. We are here to have a conversation. Feel free to raise your hand, have a conversation, unmute yourselves, ask questions. Just be mindful of when somebody else is speaking. Please keep your mic on mute. Everyone will get a chance to speak to each other and voice their opinions and sort of really take this time to reflect and share our opinions and actions, hopefully. But while we do that, please be mindful of basic rules like make sure if there's background noise in your area or in your room, just turn your audio on mute. If you want to keep your video on throughout, that would be great. We love seeing people to talk to as opposed to having a screen to talk to. But of course, we all understand bandwidth issues, and it's not something you have to do. It would be great if you do it though. And yeah, so I think before I hand it over to our awesome co-hosts for the day, Ruchi and Rishva, I'm going to share a little bit about why I got into the climate space because I thought, um, one thing I realized in the lockdown is if it's not personal, it's not worth doing. So if I don't share a personal story with you, this is probably not going to be worth your time. It's not going to be right to expect you to be as vulnerable as we are. So as hard as it may be for me, I'm going to begin with this. Um, I've been in the sustainability space for nearly a decade. In April, I'll actually complete a decade. I feel like I'm ancient already. But yeah, while getting there. In the sustainability space, when I started off, I didn't know of this concept of sustainability or climate action or CSR or CSI or sustainable development or any of these sort of terminologies that have come to be very commonplace now. When I started off, it was very simple. I saw a societal problem and I could not understand why it exists. So I felt the need to do something about it. Right. But for me, I think it started much earlier on, and which is why I truly respect our teachers even today. I think in the sixth grade, I had an English teacher. Her name, I still remember her name, Jayanti ma'am. And I still don't know her last name. So if any of you have any insights of how I can find her, please tell me. But yeah, Jayanti ma'am, she was a substitute English teacher and she had this really cool idea of having all of her classes outdoors, right? So we'd sit under a banyan tree and we'd read prose and poetry. And I was just, this is my space, this is exactly how I want to learn for the rest of my life. Just be under a tree, um, sit on a tree if possible and learn because it's really peaceful and wonderful. But yeah, while doing that, she also made us mindful of the things going around us, right? So she'd asked us what we noticed on our bus ride back home from school. And multiple occasions, bunch of kids mentioned, I saw a lot of other kids begging on the road, and I don't understand why people beg. And for a child to ask such questions, it really makes you think as to what is it that they are noticing at that moment that is so commonplace that not everyone is noticing it, right? So yeah, she just with simple questions like that, she made me realize that um, the problems always have a solution around you, right? So immediate change that happened after that one class was I started always keeping fresh food that I could probably give to people around me I see on the road or things like that. Also turned vegetarian like a few days after. Basic like big life changes that you didn't think an English teacher can make, but she really can. So yeah, since then, cut to like 2005 floods when, again, I was on my way back from school and I have a baby brother and we were in the bus and then of course the floods hit and we were stuck in Dadar and I lived in Prabhadevi. So it was around a like 2 kilometer, 5 kilometer distance that we had to walk with my brother on top of my head because he was that much of a baby. And I was like, how is this happening in a city like Bombay when all of us are just coming back from school? How am I expected to carry my baby brother on my head? Like what era are we living in, right? That's when I realized or found out anything about climate change and how it can affect each and every individual without you realizing it. And it really clearly needs like these one-off extreme weather events to either help you understand what's important to you or help you understand how systemic changes actually impact your everyday. So yes, teacher and this like flood incident was sort of what played on my mind for a very, very, very long while, all through engineering, all through life after, and it just still stays in my head. Even with big decisions, if I want to take any, I'm constantly thinking of whether I should be moving closer to the sea or will the sea level already come up to me wherever I'm at eventually, right? And that's not a good thought to be living the rest of your life with or making life decisions with. But not so morbid, no, on not such a morbid note. There are lots of hopeful things that are happening in this world as well. Some important parameters that are changing. Um, Sustainable development goals was one such big parameter. We have such amazing climate activists with Al Gore having clearly shifted a needle in some direction where major companies and policies are changing, which we will learn more about. But on that note, I'm going to let Ruchi and Rishva take on this less morbid space and make it a little more exciting and tell us more about it. The two of them are going to tell us more about climate change and how we are living with the impacts and learning more about it. And of course, both of them are sustainability enthusiasts. Ruchi is a climate reality leader. She's also an alum of the Global Shaper community. She's initiated a bunch of climate projects and has lived up to the name of being a shaper and an alum for many, many years already. We also have Rushva. He's the current curator, very modest, clearly. Has been doing amazing work within a span of couple months, has taken the world by storm. Other than just being a climate reality leader, he's also a sustainability consultant. And when you talk to him offline, he'll tell you about some real life-changing problems that he's solving. Oh, and by the way, Ruchi is also a teacher, so twice as much respect on the teacher note. Yes, Ruchi, Rushva, I'm going to let the two of you take the floor.
Welcome everyone. So what we thought we'll do today is actually we'll take you quickly through some basic concepts around climate change, help you understand the science behind it, and Ruchi and me are going to split this with a little bit the why it's happening. I explain that to you, and Ruchi will take over. So I'm going to apologize in advance because after this part, after the session, after the part that I was really depressed and I felt like there's no hope. But then when he starts talking about solutions, I think that hope is restored. So at the end of my talk, I hope that you all are not as depressed as I was, and you all are hopeful for all the things that we can achieve for the climate. So we'll just go ahead. You want to change the slides? Yeah. So let me actually begin by telling you about the blue marble, which was the first picture. It was a picture taken of it's one of the most famous pictures of the planet, taken in 1976 on the last Apollo mission. And it really puts into perspective the connectedness of the planet and how connected we all are. And what's happening in one part of the world is going to impact us. No matter where we are. So I think that's something to keep in mind. So when we talk about global warming, just next slide, we have to answer, and climate change, we must answer 3 questions. Must we change? Can we change? And will we change? I'm going to take you to the first one, which is must we change? We'll just go next. If you actually look at this, what you see in front of you right now is the Earth's atmosphere. It's this little pocket of air that is really allowing us to live and breathe and survive. But we are not treating it as a gift that we should, and we're in fact treating it like an open sewer. We're spewing millions, millions and millions of tons of carbon dioxide. If you just go to the next slide. Into the air as much as 152 million tons every 24 hours. And that's so sad to really think about that. That's how we are treating our life-giving source. We just go ahead. So, I mean, this is basic. I think most of you all understand this in terms of the sun's radiation comes to Earth. It heats up and gets reflected. The atmosphere traps some of that Earth, but as we spew more and more of these greenhouse gases into the air, there's more and more of the heat that gets trapped. And as the heat gets trapped, the temperature rises. As the temperature rises, it creates many problems. And what these problems are, I want to take you through some of those problems now, which is really what is the cost of this entire exercise. So we understand how these greenhouse gases are being produced. We understand what is coming from all industrial processes, from burning of fossil fuels, from all the things we're doing to very recently now, also the thawing of the permafrost, which has just started in the last few years. You can go ahead. So if we look at what has caused this rise, we know that the rise has been caused by burning of fossil fuel, which has increased exponentially after the Second World War. If you go ahead. And that has clearly resulted in the rise of global temperatures. This is just from 1880s to 2020, what the surface temperatures look like. And you can see that it has been increasing quite significantly in the last 3 decades. In fact, 19 of the 20 hottest years ever recorded in mankind were since 2001. The hottest of those were the last 5 years. That really goes to say that it is becoming a problem which we must start paying more attention to. We'll just go ahead. To give you an example of how hot it really is, inside the Arctic Circle this year, the highest temperature recorded was 38 degrees Celsius. To me, this was the scariest thing ever, to imagine that the planet is heating up so much that it goes up to 38 degrees Celsius in the Arctic Circle. Let me just go ahead. Obviously, the heat waves you can see them across Europe right now. They've also been across India. We've seen them in New Delhi. We can keep going ahead. In Gujarat, and you can go ahead from here as well. It's just the impact of the heat waves is impacting, of course, the impact of the heat. When we think about people, it impacts the poor and the marginalized the most. We've seen so many deaths in the last few years due to heat. But this heat is not only impacting the land, all the heat that comes is actually going into the oceans. And we're seeing how the ocean temperatures have risen significantly by 50% or more in the last 15 years. So let's just go ahead. Now, what is happening with all of this heat? As you saw in the beginning, you saw the picture of the blue marble, you saw all the currents, and you saw all the the connectivity of it all. But what's happening with the heat is, as you can see, the currents are all changing. All the patterns are being twisted around because the ocean is getting so warm, the patterns keep changing, the currents change, and that creates many problems, particularly when you think about rain, cyclones, and floods. For example, we've seen, we just go ahead, we've seen the cyclones hit India. We've seen one very recently on the west coast that came from the Arabian Sea. And of course, there was Arpan that devastated West Bengal and Bangladesh, particularly the Sundarban area, which was the largest surviving mangrove forest. And that was definitely an area of concern. We're just going to go ahead. And to the next slide. Yeah, this is just some images from the devastation that happened. Can you just go back for a second? I want you to kind of look at this, and this is what we call now a cloud burst. And this is what is causing so much devastation in terms of flooding and excessive rain. I mean, seeing it right now in Mumbai. Just like last week, I think there has been an insane amount of rain, flooding that has been caused due to it. And we've seen that, if we go ahead, we've seen that in Tamil Nadu in the past. And we can just go through some of these images that are just devastating to look at. We just move ahead. You can just see the impact of cloudburst. And yeah, Varun, it's true. I mean, this is 55 degrees Celsius in California. That was it's scary. So all of this heat that is being evaporated from the oceans is also sucking out the moisture from the soil on land, and that is causing severe droughts. And if you just go to the next slide, and we're seeing this in Bihar, we're seeing this in Gujarat, we're seeing this in many parts of the world, of course, but obviously we've tried to show you some images of the impact here in India in particular. We just go ahead. Go next, and yeah. So this is actually a really interesting, when you look at the data in this format, I think it puts everything in a really big perspective, because you can see how the extreme climate-related disasters have been just rising in magnitude in terms of impact over the last few years. We just go ahead. This is just a very disturbing little comparison of the declining mass in Greenland. And that is what is also caused due to the heat and the global warming. And what that is doing is also resulting in the rise of sea level. And we are seeing that already impact how coastal cities get flooded so easily. You just go next. We can see as the high tides come into Miami these days, there is definitely flooding that happens on a very, very regular basis. For all of us who live in Mumbai, seeing little water in terms of flooding is not new at all, particularly during the monsoon season. If we just go ahead, I think there's some images from some colonies in Bombay very recently when the rain came in. And when we look at cities that are really at risk, both in terms of assets and in terms of population, Mumbai features on both those lists, so does Calcutta. And so that's definitely something for India to be concerned about. And population, of course, Calcutta is the highest amount of population that is really at risk. Just go ahead. Now, when we talk about climate change and global warming, we often think, oh, this is a problem that's really not impacting me because, oh, I'm seeing something happen in coastal cities. But it really is impacting everyone. It's impacting us in many, many ways. Climate change is also a medical emergency, something to think about. And I will explain to you why if we just go next. Tropical diseases used to first stay only in the tropics because they would only spread when the temperatures around were of a certain degree. But as the planet is heating up and as more and more parts of the world are becoming warmer, these tropical diseases are spreading everywhere. We're seeing the West Nile virus in northern Canada. We're seeing dengue fever in Japan. We're seeing, of course, Zika virus, chikungunya, dengue, all of these mosquito-borne diseases are a result of having temperatures where mosquitoes can thrive. And to imagine that it can happen in Russia and in northern Canada was unimaginable to really think about. We just go ahead. This is just the mosquito and the Zika virus. We can go next. We can just move next. What's also happening with viruses, I think, is that as we are cutting down more land to cutting down more forests, a lot of these pathogens are being exposed to human populations. That is creating more spread. I mean, we're in the middle of a pathogen that has really put all our lives on hold. We're doing this entire conversation on Zoom. So I think we are very aware of the risks that these pathogens pose to us. And in addition to that, the global warming is also really impacting air pollution, because the more fossil fuels we burn, the more they pollute the atmosphere, and therefore it results in air pollution. That is also something that we must really be careful about. Air pollution is not just haze and smoke in the sky. If you go next, as most of us imagine and remember Delhi from last year, Delhi has been a burning issue with air pollution. And even I think Bombay last year was quite bad, particularly in the winter. But the problem with air pollution is not just, it's in the air, it's also really impacting how long you can live, it's impacting your lungs, it's impacting your lifespan. So all of these concerns are things that we must definitely start addressing and helping change. Just another fact, we just move ahead. Yeah, so we know that the cost of carbon is very, very high. The cost of carbon is not just, oh, we're burning the fuel and that's how much we pay for our electricity or for our fuel costs, like in our cars. But all of this is causing an immeasurable amount of loss in terms of natural disasters, diseases, and just destitute that will be caused as more and more people are unable to live in extreme heat. So must we change? Yes, we must. Just go ahead. But can we change? I think this is the time, and I like Ruchi and her positive energy to help all of you come out of this shockwave and take this forward.
Thank you, Rushva, for giving us clarity about how climate change works, how global warming works, and the kind of impacts we're seeing all over the world right now, and especially examples from India, which are ranging right from floods to droughts to medical emergency and whatnot. So coming back to the second question that we really want to address right now is, right, that can we change? So the answer to this is, of course, extremely exciting and extremely positive. We already have a lot of solutions out there. Let's see where we stand when it comes to implementation of these solutions. So, next slide. So let's look at our story when it comes to just wind energy. In 2000, we had projected that we will be able to reach 30 gigawatts by 2010. However, in 2019, we have exceeded this goal by almost 22 times when it just comes to wind energy alone. Next slide. So globally, just wind energy can supply us with more electricity than the entire world currently uses. And this is just wind energy right now. Next slide. Even in India, the wind energy story has been extremely positive. The wind energy market has matured over the last few years. India is home to some of the leading companies when it comes to wind energy. And in addition to that, wind energy in India is almost cost competitive with energy that we make from coal in itself. Get the next slide. Let's look at the solar energy story. So the solar energy story is even more dramatic than the wind energy story and even more positive, actually. So 18 years ago in 2002, we predicted that we will be able to install 1 gigawatts of solar energy capacity per year by 2010, just 1 gigawatts. In 2010, we exceeded that goal by 17 times. In 2019, we exceeded that goal by 121 times. Next slide. So we've seen an exponential rise in the number of solar PV installations all over the world. The advantage of this, next slide, Matak. The advantage of this is, of course, the changing costs in terms of solar energy equipment, similar to other technologies such as computer chips or cell phones, the minute there is a market demand, there is a market request, you will automatically have more suppliers plugging into the system, plugging into the industry, and automatically the amount of equipment that you need to install solar installations across the world will decrease. So the kind of cost that we were looking at the beginning of in 1976, which is almost $80, is almost negligible right now. And in a lot of regions, solar energy costs less than what it would cost us to, when we are looking at producing energy from coal in itself. Next slide. So in India, Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, and Telangana are investing in large-scale solar energy initiatives. This image is actually of a solar park in Gujarat in Charanka village. The solar park is one of the largest in the world. It covers 2,000 hectares in Gujarat, and it is estimated to save 8 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions in just 1 year. In just 1 year, that's what we're looking at in terms of impact with one solar park that we've created. Next slide. So in addition to, of course, urban solar installations or urban solar PV installations, in addition to solar parks that we're looking at, we're also looking at pay-as-you-go solar power systems, which is independent systems which are not connected to the grid in any way. And what this has helped us achieve is energy security. It helps us achieve energy security in regions across the country that do not have access to electricity, or even if they do have access to electricity, they have extremely patchy access, maybe 2 hours in a day, maybe 3 hours in a day. It goes off during the night when you actually need the electricity the most, right? So installing these kind of technologies, which are independent individual technologies, have really helped us, at least in developing countries, move forward when it comes to energy access for everyone in the country. Next slide, Matika. So we have a lot of success stories across a lot of villages in India. This is one in Meerwada village, and you can see, the fact that solar PV costs are so low. It is it's financially easy for people even in rural areas to invest in this. In addition to that, we have a lot of different tech systems coming into place. We have a lot of different financing solutions as well. This kind of combination is making it easier for villages to adopt solar technologies as well, and it's of course making it a lot easier to adopt it than going the traditional route, or we need to kind of install an electrical line in this particular village for it to be lit up, right? We're able to move away from this thought and try different types of innovative technologies in all sorts of our reaching areas of the country. Next slide, Madhika. So of course, in addition to microfinancing and different types of tech solutions, we're also looking at a lot of community work, community projects. This is an example from the Orissa Tribal Women's Barefoot Solar Engineers Association, which is a tongue twister in itself. So what this community does, it works with women. It trains women to install solar lighting. It trains women to maintain solar PV installations, and it also trains women to actually go out there and talk to communities about the benefits of solar power and how they can utilize it within their own communities in itself. So again, great on-ground movement, grassroots movements, right? Next slide. Okay, and again, another example from a night market, something that we all love to probably go to at some point or the other, right? So this is one in Ahmedabad where instead of using, the traditional kerosene lamps, they have actually switched to solar lanterns. One of the reasons that this night market could even happen, and like Rushwa already mentioned, right, there are health implications of not switching over to more renewable, more clean sources of energy. The minute we move away from kerosene lamps, or the minute we move away from open fires, we're automatically creating a healthier environment for the people who are actually living in those areas. I just love how vibrant this particular market looks, just at least how colorful it is, right, with the solar lamps as opposed to the kerosene lamps and all of that smoke spewing around everywhere. It's a feel good picture. So lots of different ways in which we're seeing solar have impact in our country, lots of different types of initiatives which are actually enabling us to move away from fossil fuels to renewables. Next slide, Matika. And one example that we actually really need to pay attention to is Chile, which is something which honestly I didn't know about also before, this Truth in 10 presentation. So Chile has been able to completely change its entire policy to support solar energy. So if you can just have a look at this graph, right? Just look at where they were in 2013. This is 2013, the first graph, which is negligible. I can't even see what's happening out there. And this is at the end of 2018. At the end of 2018, Chile had installed 2.3 gigawatts of solar, but it had 16.67 gigawatts of solar projects approved or under construction. 16.67. So it actually went from 0 to 16.67 over a period of 5 years, just 5 years. There are many regions, of course, across the world, which can also implement these kind of policies, support these kind of technologies, because we're still in a state of setting up our systems, setting up our industry, setting up our different sectors. We don't need to move the entire route of it is set up and now we need to retrofit it, and how do we move it? We're starting afresh. So let's start afresh. Let's start afresh better. Next slide, Mithika. And I mean, just, again, talking about the benefits of solar, right? Every hour, the earth gets as much energy from the sun as we need to run the entire global economy for a year in just 1 hour. If we can increase the way we harness the power of solar and use it well, we can really make a lot of progress towards solving the climate crisis or tackling the climate crisis and helping local economies at the same time. Next slide, Madhaka. So, of course, in addition to green power, where we are talking about switching over the way we are generating energy, generating electricity, we also want to talk about different strategies that are helping with mitigation, right? And one of them is, of course, building energy efficiency. India has over the last 3 to 4 years, it's released an energy conservation building code, which has been adopted by a lot of different states across India. The idea is that by actually moving towards building energy efficiency, by actually working on these codes, we'll actually save building 3,000 megawatts of fossil fuel plants. 3,000 megawatts can be saved just by simply moving into more energy efficient technologies and learning to design and build better. Next slide, Matika. We could actually look at saving almost $42 billion each year with just enhanced energy efficiency. Just $42 billion per year. Just imagine the cost of that, or just this kind of savings that we're looking at right out there. Next slide, Matika. If you're looking at different kinds of industries that, of course, will benefit from such kind of a switch is LED lights. We've seen in fact, I think pretty much everywhere we are seeing only LEDs in play right now. We are going to imagine that in the next 8 years, LEDs are going to take up 95% of the market share. And we already know energy efficient technologies like LED are definitely going to help reduce emissions, because by and large, they help us reduce the amount of electricity we need. That's what we're aiming for when we're talking about energy efficiency, and we're really needing to target when it comes to mitigation at the end of the day. And another industry example, right, is the automobile manufacturers across the world. Almost every automobile manufacturer in the world right now has either already released an EV, or it is under production, it is under design, and it is preparing to launch it. This is, of course, another aspect of the entire sustainability revolution. And these are just a couple of the industries that we touched upon, that are major carbon emitters. And there are lots of different ways in which we can switch the way these industries are working without without having to kind of just rely on green energy as our solution for climate change mitigation. Next slide, please. So can we change? Yes, of course we can change. We've seen that we can change. And coming down to then the question of, will we change? That's, of course, a question that all of us need to answer ourselves. And like Mithika shared, right? We need to all plug into our own personal stories about why we are going to change. But as a whole, there is exciting and positive news when it comes to the will we change part as well. Next slide, Mithika. So in December 2015, the at the Paris climate negotiations, every nation in the world agreed to phase down greenhouse gas pollution to net zero emissions as early as the second half of this century. So we are looking at going down to net zero just in the next 10 years, no, 50 years. Yeah, yeah, 50 years, right? Century. And we need to remember that climate action isn't just about what countries do, right? We need to remember that we need to take the lead on climate change. We're already seeing corporations, we're seeing states, we're seeing provinces, we're seeing cities, we're seeing everyone commit to reducing emissions, and it's important for us to kind of join in this fight as well. This is an example from the People's Climate March, which was held in Delhi as early as 2014. So people have been taking to the streets and trying to get the government to pay attention and switch to more decisive climate action since 2014. We should have probably started earlier, but that's still, it's great news that this started 6 years ago. And we need to basically continue and build the momentum when it comes to this. Hopefully, you know, more seminars, more presentations, more acts of leadership, which is what I'll talk about next. Next slide, please. So what can we do? Of course, we need to support people who are already working in the climate change space. We need to support them either with our, we need to support the right leaders with our votes. We need to support them by protest, by taking to the streets. And most importantly, we also need to support them with the kind of choices that we're making in our daily lives. What we would, Mritika, next slide. What we really need to do is ensure that we commit to our own acts of leadership. And we need to commit to our own acts of we need to commit to our own acts of leadership because our world depends on it. We all need to work on this together and cooperate and be helpful with each other. So thank you. With this, I hope that we were able to really touch upon, yes, climate change is an issue, but there are lots of solutions out of there. There are lots of different ways in which we can contribute and commit to this movement. And we'll talk a little bit more about acts of leadership next. So thank you. And I guess we can look at questions a little later, but Mritika, over to you.
Thank you, Rishva. Thank you, Ruchi. Going from understanding what we can do and understanding the extreme weather events to actually looking at solutions to address them, I think it's a big transition. A lot of emotions in a span of a few minutes. So on that note, I'm going to open up the floor for a few people to share their experience as to how they're feeling about any personal story that they've experienced either through disaster or any solutions that they're actively working in currently. If anyone is interested in speaking up, you can just raise your hand or maybe just unmute yourself and tell us your story. Okay, you guys will have to talk in your breakout rooms, and I get that, but it would be really nice to hear one of your stories, yeah? How do you guys feel? How are you feeling once you heard Rishva talk about all the moving things that we've just seen? I see Akash has turned his video on. Akash, do you want to share something with us? What about the solutions? How many of you felt positive about hearing the solutions? Just turn your video on if you felt positive about it. Or hopeful, rather. Yeah? Awesome. And turn your video on if you've experienced a disaster that's not this pandemic, up close and in person. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of people. Okay, what we're going to do now is move into breakout rooms so that you don't have to share your experiences with everyone present here, but in a smaller group can actually have a meaningful conversation. Talk about what your act of leadership can be, or you're hoping for it to be, right? What we are expecting by the end of the session are two things. One, we would like you to think about an act of leadership that Ruchi just mentioned. Have that up on Jamboard. Jamboard app, by the way, if you have it, if you've logged into Zoom from your phone, please download the Jamboard app. If you're on your laptop, you're cool. We will share the links towards the end of the breakout room as well. And then, of course, if you have an idea and you would like to engage with more people and understand that you're not alone in this fight against climate change, we will find ways to engage with you even after this conversation, such that it doesn't feel like today is the end all of this discussion. We will take this discussion forward. Are we okay with making breakout rooms, Hamsini? Nidhi, Hamsini? Yeah? No? We'll
Yeah.
take 2 minutes. Okay.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, what you guys need to do is just accept the breakout room when you're being assigned it, yeah? Just click on admit now.
Sorry, somebody is joining the meeting now, so I have to add him to one of the room. Give me 1 minute.
Sure. In your breakout room, there'll be people from all different cities, and like if it's India and Sri Lanka, as you can tell, so that should also be exciting. Get to know where you're from, get to introduce yourselves, and then of course you'll know what to do in the breakout rooms. You have some amazing facilitators here.
Okay, I'm going to open up the room now.
See you in a bit.
Alright, hi guys. My name is. Are we waiting for more people? One second. We'll just wait if there are more people to join.
Is anyone speaking? I can't hear anything.
Is somebody speaking? I can't hear anything.
No, I'm speaking. You're good.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so to start, I'm Minashka from the Tangent Hub in Goa. Am I supposed to say
Hi.
something? Impact Officer for the Global Shapers Tangent Hub.
Nice.
The rest of you?
So I think this is all we have for the breakout room. These are the people that we'll have for the breakout room. I'll be facilitating the this breakout room. My name is Varun Nishani. I recently joined the Global Shapers community at the Nagpur Hub. I also got trained with the climate reality this July, which was a virtual training, and it's been a thrilling experience for me to learn so much about climate change and its impacts on all of us individually. So I'll just quickly share my screen. And, So the breakout rooms, the agenda of the breakout rooms is to understand the importance of coalition building for a positive climate action. Um, Going on, I want to ask you guys if you guys have any specific ideas with regards to any ways in which you would want to lead a climate action movement. Any specific ways that you are already doing something or probably would wish to do something?
Who would want to go first? Brijesh, do you want to go? Okay. Would you like to go?
Yeah, so I am Brijesh. I'm actually not a part of any hub.
I can't hear you actually.
Am I audible?
It's very,
It's
yeah,
very faint.
yeah.
Am I
Now it's
audible
better.
now?
Yes, 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 much better.
Yeah. So I'm actually not a part of any hub, and I just joined via Facebook group of Mumbai Hub, and I'm actually aware about the climate action movement, and I do take my step by whenever I am traveling to work, I make sure that I do not take my own car, or if I take my own car, I pool with someone like whoever needs help. So by that, I think I'm doing my little part by reducing the consumption of fuel and having a little step towards climate change, climate action.
That's wonderful. I'm very sure that these baby steps, a lot of baby steps make a big impact cumulatively. Anyone else would want to go in?
I want to say that in Goa, we are facing a major climate issue at the moment. What's happening is that through the Western Ghats, which crosses through Goa, we've got a biodiversity sanctuary, but the government has passed three major projects. One's a transmission line, one's a 6-lane highway, and one's the doubling of an existing railway track. Coal transportation. So a bunch of citizens all over Goa, and I'm talking about in thousands, we've all come together and we are really protesting this. We've got lawyers, scientists, artists, musicians, students, medical students, we've got everybody, but how do you say, protesting against something that the government has passed already is no easy feat. Success, we got the Supreme Court to pass a stay order and ask the Goa government for an explanation why it's happened. How can you pass such projects through a biodiversity protected hotspot? But we're still waiting, so fingers crossed.
So we come
Wow,
up with a
that's amazing.
sustainable solution to this.
Yeah.
More
Hi,
power to you. Yeah. Go on.
hi. I'm Pranay. I'm from Global Shapers Mumbai Hub, and I'm into real estate and plan. So we develop projects in Mumbai, and there are lots of difficulties to incorporate the green building solutions. Though there are green building norms and there are some building codes as well. So there are difficulties from the economic point of view and practical point of view to incorporate. However, I'm trying my best to incorporate slowly but little by little some solutions with every project. So probably incorporating organic farming in some projects, probably replacing some existing building materials with the green building materials as per the building code. So yeah, that's how working right now.
Wow.
That's
I
a
think I'm the
wonderful
only one left, so I'm going to go next. My name is Nidhi, and I am leading an organization which is called Science for Society, and we work in the intersection of energy and livelihoods. So we work with the landless women farmers, providing them decentralized renewable energy solutions. So I'm a part of Global Shapers Mumbai Hub, but my work is primarily in it's my small startup that we lead, and we work in the decentralized renewable energy for agriculture. Happy to meet all of you.
So I think all of us, the five of us, are in a way or the other, we're all, you know, participating in the climate action and the movement. So that's wonderful. I think I have a lot of things that I could learn from you. Now coming on to my climate story, the picture that's coming on is, I mean, it's a very random picture, but so I have been traveling, not traveling. I mean, I've always been a mountain person because of my parents. They've always took me to, since I was 5 years old, they took me for my first trek when I was 5, and mountains is a place that my parents think of when they think of a vacation, right? And that got on to me. I've been traveling to uh, majorly the parts of Himalayas for the most of my vacations. And back in 2018, I was traveling alone. This was in Dharamkot above McLeodganj, and this is when I was sitting in a cafe having breakfast. This is when I spotted a bunch of people all wearing green t-shirts. Most of them were foreigners, and you know, all of them had a sack and a broom in their hands and things like that. And I was very curious about what they were doing, and I quickly went up to them, spoke to them about what they are doing, and found my way to their coordinator also. And that's when he told me that they were trying to clean up the river that was passing alongside, and even the part of the trek that they were traveling, they used to pick up all the plastic junk that they get. And this is what probably changed my perspective towards using things, or consumerism, or uh, even climate action. Because and I, over the years, over the past few years, I've seen a change in the amount of plastic that you see in these mountains. I probably try to make 2 to 3 trips to a mountain, and at least one every year. And I've seen a change in the amount, in the temperatures also, and even the amount of junk that you can spot on the hills. So I joined my day. I joined these people, and I spent the rest of the day speaking to these people about their perspectives on climate change and why they were doing this instead of just relaxing on their vacation. So this is what we got up to after a long day of trek, and this is the amount of plastic most of us helped collect. I mean, this was an effort made by the organization over the last. I think this junk was collected over a period of a week, I think, and this is not just the one location where this was. So I'm very confident and very optimistic about the power of action and the power of coalition in terms of climate change, climate action. So these are some of the things that you can do with regards to being a part of climate action. Where I mean, if you guys can quickly read, then probably just think of some things which you might want to bring on as an act of leadership that you guys want to take up. So like Brijesh said that he has already uh, been doing his part, his bit in his day-to-day life, and we can always have more of these acts of leaderships that people can pick up and learn from you. And so I want you to quickly go through all of these, and probably think of something that you want to commit from after this webinar, and probably stick to it for the rest of, let's say, even your life, or at least a year from now. I will share a link to a Jamboard where you'll be given a sticky note where you have to write your commitment that you make after this webinar, and you stick to it. You also have to put your name and your email IDs on each of these sticky notes. So I will quickly so we are at breakout room number 5. I will quickly put in the link to the Jamboard, and you all can put your active leadership, something that you wish to complete in the span of next 1 year, or probably you wish to continue Yeah. Maybe is there an option to use the chat inside of a breakout room?
Yes, there is. You can just, I think there is.
Oh, yes.
Are you not able to see the chat button? Because I'm able to see that.
But I think it's going to everyone. Everyone as in the whole group. Should I put it there?
I can only see, yeah, I can.
What I'll do is I'll just put it as room number 5.
Okay.
Just for the people who, those people who it's fine.
Just paste it, it's fine, yeah.
Have all of you guys got it? What you wish to do for the next 1 year?
Varun, just to be mindful on the time, just if people can, everyone can add it on the Jamboard. For me, it's showing bad request error 4400.
Which one? The link?
Same here.
I will put this in.
It's okay. I think it's not working. Let's just put it in the group. Wait one more.
Another Jamboard link.
Yes, the Jamboard was not working.
Understand how this is working.
Very cool. Very, very cool. We'll wait for Medhika to come back and take over as host. Oh, here she is. I will hand it over back.
Hi guys. Yes, I know breakout rooms always feel like, just when you're about to make a connection and complete that sentence, you have to part ways. It's really sad and tragic. Okay, so I think we have all of our breakout rooms are done. Everyone's back, right? Yes, we have everyone back. Wonderful. So I know we had a lot of conversations flowing and, had the ball rolling, got to know each other a little bit, hopefully, got to see a little bit about what acts of leadership look like. I'm hoping everyone had the chance to talk. For whoever did not, here's the time. We have time to reflect, to talk to each other, to ask each other questions. So there aren't, we can just all of us have our video on since we anyway had them on for the breakout room and it's our space to speak. So I know I was talking to this wonderful lady called Saloni. If you're still around, I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections. Of course, if we have anyone else here who would like to share, I see Samreet here again. Hi, Samreet. I see a few other people who were talking about it. Okay, how do you feel? What was the breakout room like for you? Kriti, I see you making an interesting face. So please tell us how you are feeling.
Was that me? Did you say Kruti?
That's right. Hi,
That's
Kriti.
funny. I was actually in a breakout room with Avi and Ankita and Ruchi. And it turned out all the 4 of us are climate reality leaders and shapers. So
wonderful.
So it was just, we stayed in our bubble. No, we talked about our individual acts of leadership and the fact that Ruchi is amazing at giving presentations. Yeah, and I mean, it was a nice discussion. It was useful to exchange, I think, because I think all of us are in different cities, so it's good to exchange different perspectives of our own climate experiences.
Thank you, Kriti. Anyone else? Do you have questions about climate change, or do you feel helpless about it, or do you feel stuck about creating change?
Well, if I may.
Please do. Go ahead, Samjeet.
Thank you. So I was really getting a part of the discussion in the breakout rooms, but then unfortunately my internet connection played a number on me and I had to drop off. But the little bit of conversation we did have was like, I was really enjoying it. And my concerns really, as I mentioned about climate change campaigning or on the ground implementation are, well, climate change is not a new issue. It is something we have been talking about, discussing for like almost 50 years, if not less, okay? And in India, given the kind of history we have, people are so connected and so dependent on nature for their, daily livelihood. It is even longer so than compared to the Western world. The problem is right now that with all the campaigning that is happening, with all the kind of proposals, with all the kind of discussions that are happening on the international forums, there is very little that trickles down onto the ground. There is very little that actually sees being implemented as a framework. Right now, since we are in the middle of a complete policy overhaul, a lot of policies are being implemented to say, free education to everybody, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, cleanliness campaign ho gaya, health education ho gaya. I think where are we seeing climate on the entire governmental agenda, and why, if it is not there, is it not at the top of the entire boardroom, and why are active policies not being implemented? And if they are not being implemented, if it is not a top of the agenda for the government, then what are the climate groups doing on the ground to kind of make sure that that happens? I mean, Akash was talking about the campaigning that happened in the RA regarding the RA park, right? The forest conservation. And I was right there in Mumbai, Akash. I was living in Warsaw. So I was very much a part of, all the activism that was going on around it. The problem is still they went ahead with the deforestation. Okay, on the face of it, unhone maan liya and they've stopped cutting trees, but at the back end, if you know the reality, the forest was still cut down, and space was made. So a lot of the campaigning that happens does not actively translate to solutions or positive solutions or long-term solutions. A lot of that happens is it's like whitewashing kar dete hain, ya fir just for the benefit of the public. It's kind of an eye wash that is given. So I think I have a problem with that, because in long term that is not a solution, I feel. Yeah, you guys, over to you.
That's actually a very interesting challenge. Ruchi, Rushva, do you have any points to share about your maybe campaign experience, or how do you deal with knowing that not every little act you do is actually going to change the system?
I think honestly, one of the things that we have to really start talking about is climate. Put the point really well, Samrit, that I think climate change is not on the agenda for Indian politicians, because there are lots of other things that they care about. But what they're failing to see really is that all of these other things, which is people dying in poverty, people not being able to produce enough food, all of these things are linked to climate change. And unless we start talking about that linkages further, they are not going to see. The politician has a politician has no incentive to really care about anything other than themselves till their constituents ask them to care. So we are the constituents. It should be on us, and it is on all of us to continue to raise our voices for the climate, highlight these connections and interconnections that exist, which is why we are asking you to pick an active leadership, and we will help you make that happen in whatever way that we can. And the idea is really, let us hold our leaders accountable for the commitments that they have made on international forums. Very rightly so. If they have, very rightly so, that we have to kind of hold everyone accountable for the commitments that they make, whether it is us or whether it is our leaders who we elect. We need to also elect leaders who are going to care about the climate. You're seeing this climate narrative being very, very strong spoken about in the US in their current elections, just because of how anti-climate Trump is. And we don't have that anti-climate sentiment here, which is why I don't think we're speaking up enough, but it's high time we all speak up.
The urgency is very important for sure. That I think to know that this is going to be irreversible change. And it needs to be done right now, not 10 years from now, is absolutely important. And just linking the pay structure of everyone, even on the corporate level and even on the government level, like Unilever's 25% of their leadership pay structure is based on what they're offsetting, the carbon offsetting that they're doing. So that's like a big, they are the ones at the scale that can actually drive policy change, consumer behavior change, and so should government. So I think somebody, it's a great point. I just could not hold back.
No, I mean, when you look at the corporate sector, I mean, CSR is a very, very important part of the entire corporate game these days. There is hardly a corporate nationally or globally that is moving forward without a CSR agenda. So much so that diversity and inclusion, for example, is a huge part of the entire game as part of the entire CSR and sustainability. जिसको बोलते हैं, it is an entire vertical altogether. So if CSR and sustainability is an entire vertical altogether, then let us hold the corporates also accountable to what kind of outcomes are they having in terms of what kind of things are they implementing internally and externally in order to conserve the environment, in order to make sure that the consumption that they are doing is, reduced per annum and not goes into the increased part per annum also. So I think that those small little incremental holding people accountable for the kind of spending that they are doing is going to build up to create a larger pressure on the government to take this issue more seriously, to make it a, let's say, election agenda, to quote unquote in political terms, right?
I hope they see some business value also, not only CSR value, but
Amit, I think I differ with you on that one point. So I think my experience might help you a little bit get some more perspective. So I've been working with the government of Jharkhand for the past 3 months now, and I feel like if you tell them that you need to plant more trees, you need to care about carbon emissions, they will not take you seriously. You have to give them an incentive to take you seriously. So all you can do is tell them that, hey, if you plant these many trees, you're going to get these many people jobs, because someone has to go out there in the field and plant those trees. So what we did was we tried to strengthen Manrega, which is a government scheme that guarantees employment, to actually go out, plant those trees, build trenches, build bunds, build talavs, which raises groundwater levels. So I think you need to approach it from a different angle rather than campaigning against the government. You need to tell them ways in which they can see, particular benefits that they will then feel motivated to, create real change. So that's my perspective on it.
I think it's a very, 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 very interesting and very, very valid point, Nish. I think also it's really the way it works. We have to acknowledge that that's the system is that they have to. They will only do something when they're incentivized, and I 100% agree that if we can approach them differently and approach them with the perspective of, here is why it will help you get more jobs, here is how caring for the climate will help you improve your health conditions, will help reduce pollution. These are the narratives, I think, very rightly, as you put, that governments will listen to. But at the same time, we must ourselves be aware of how all of these are linked to the climate, and then take that forward. I think, Nino, you have a question.
To add what Samrit had also mentioned, I think what private guys are doing, for example, in CSR or in ESG, for example, these days, I think that also brings out a different perspective, which indirectly puts a pressure on the government to do something like that. If, for example, I'm an investor, so one of my portfolio companies has a huge plant in Bhiwandi. and something in Baddi. So the government over there had no interest in doing something like that. It's in a big SEZ. So once we started implementing ESG policies, within 6 months, the government had to come out with a rule and regulation for all the factories in the area, in the SEZ, to start implementing ESG policies. So as Mithika just said, the money also works. So the private sector collaboration also, indirectly and directly, in the end, it works out well for that particular area if the private sector is quite active. And I think that's what the public-private participation is all about. In the end, some collaboration comes out from that collaboration.
Wonderful.